Hello, everybody, and welcome to another AlphaChat. My name's Stephen Huppert. I work as a consultant in the superannuation and wealth management industry, and I'm joined today by Mark MacLeod, General Manager Australia for AlphaCert. And today we're going to be talking about Prudential Standards CPS 230, which I'm sure is sending shivers through a lot of APRA-regulated entities at the moment. It's a new operational risk standard, which is coming into force at 1 July 2025. Welcome, Mark, and you must be hearing CPS 230 in a lot of the conversations you're having in the industry at the moment.
Hi, Stephen. It's great to be having this chat with you. Yeah, it's not just the APRA-regulated entities, right? It's the investment managers and other material service providers, and it's going to be, coming down to the pipe for folks next year, and there might be some new contracts getting redrafted up to sort of October next year. So yeah, the net has widened, and APRA has caught material service providers in the standard as well. So yeah, a lot ahead of a lot of people.
Yeah, and I think if we start by looking at some of the key features of CPS 230, and then we'll move into the impact on the superannuation trustee, but we really want to focus on the impact for non-APRA regulated entities, because I think, as you say, the net's been thrown pretty widely, and non-APRA regulated entities have got to take notice.
Yeah, absolutely.
So the core of CPS 230 is about operational resilience and operational resilience as it relates to critical operations. And APRA is looking for their APRA-regulated entities to strengthen operational risk management. And a really important part of that is improving business continuity planning. And as you said, there's a heightened observation of the third-party risk management. And not just third parties, it's also fourth parties, etc. So if you're not an APRA-regulated entity, you still might be asked about your service providers.
Yeah, absolutely. And AlphaCert as a material service provider to fund managers. So this for the super funds, we're 100% caught in these requirements, just as others, custodians, investment managers will be as well. So yeah, really relevant topic, I think.
Yeah, and part of the reason why APRA really is putting this blowtorch on resilient critical operations is to make sure that the customer isn't as affected as they might be by outages. And there's certainly been no shortage of examples where customers, and especially in the superannuation industry, members have been significantly impacted by outages and other failings of the third-party providers. Just over the last 6 months, we've seen the cloud issues by Google at UniSuper. We've seen ART with outages. Just in the last couple of weeks, we've seen some of these outsourcing arrangements starting to be tested in the courts, with ASIC taking CBUS to court and ESSS Super suing one of their service providers. So it is really important that the trustees and the other APRA-regulated entities have this much sharper focus on uninterrupted servicing of their customers. The people helping them will have that same blowtorch on uninterrupted services.
Yeah, and you can imagine that's going to accelerate with CPS 230 in play, because it won't be a nice to have, right? There's a regulatory obligation on the fund, and so there's therefore an obligation on their service providers as well. And I think it's going to move from a nice to have to an essential. If you want to continue to be supporting a super fund with essential services, then it's going to be the price of entry now, right?
That's a really good way to think about it, because some of the non-APRA regulated entities that I talk to, they say, why should we care about CPS 230? But you've hit the nail on the head there, Mark. If you want to work for APRA regulated entities, you have to care about CPS 230.
Yep, that's right. And I think it's going to be really interesting. There'll be service providers that are well advanced on this already, and we can go into what's going to be required. And there's going to be others that haven't even really given it much thought, right? And so, yeah, I think we start going through some of the key elements here, and you just started to mention, for example, business continuity plans, but there's a few things that are required. And then when you start to get in there, you can start to get a feel for how ready you are as an organisation to get this, right?
That's a good way to think about it. So, Mark, if you were head of operations or running a big fund manager with maybe 3 or 4 big super funds using you as a fund manager, What should you be starting to think about today?
Think of where the super funds are at the moment. So they're drawing up their list of material service providers, and caught in that will be like custodians, the investment managers, or any third-party investment managers with an investment mandate, and some of the core technology providers, right, that are essential for keeping the operation running. And so probably the first thing I'd be thinking about is, what is my service and why is it material to the super fund? I think that there will help you understand not just what is a critical operation for your organization, but why are you critical to the super fund? And then what are your operations that are critical to the super fund? So it's having some empathy for your client, understanding exactly why you are critical. And once you've got that, then you know what operations are going to be in sight for you. And I think from there, you can start to break it down, like what resources do I need in order to meet that critical operations? That'll be your people, your technology, and your processes, right? And it's going to be, that's going to help you narrow down what's happening in the organization and what individuals or teams, what technologies are they using or not using, and then what are those critical processes. And I think from there, you'll start to do a short list of what are the risks, what are my controls. If something happened, how long would I be out for? Am I talking days, weeks, hours, minutes? So these are all the things, all those questions, and it's almost like a waterfall of decision trees as you start to work through that. And I think that'll be probably the first step for a lot of service providers is what is essential, what resources am I deploying to perform those tasks, and then how risky are those tasks, and what are my controls, and how quickly could I recover? Those are all the questions that I think every organisation will have to ask themselves.
Some super funds will already be asking those questions of their service providers, but I'm sure some super funds won't be there yet, or maybe they're working through some sort of order. They'll be talking to their technology or administrators, and they might have got to fund managers yet. So if I'm a fund manager, I'd be getting ready for that question, even if it hasn't come yet.
That's right. And just use the example of ourselves, AlphaCert. So, these are very common for a technology provider, but the questions are, what is your position from a cybersecurity perspective? Is my data safe? If we went down, am I going to lose my data? Is the data only accessible by people who need to access the data? What is the recovery time if the infrastructure goes down? How quickly could you be back up and running again? And what operations are getting run on our software that is critical to that operation? And so all of that starts to get contractually tracked. And so they want to know, have you done a cybersecurity test? Have you run a business continuity plan? And do you know what your recovery time objectives are going to be? And you contractually confident enough to be able to say that this is credible and I'm contractually going to be obliged to meet that, right? As you start to work through that, one, you satisfy yourself, and then contractually you'll probably need to satisfy the super fund and pass due diligence on that.
And I think that's a really important point, because you might be satisfied, you might have done your checks and run your pen testing or whatever, but it's important to understand what levels of attestation, what levels of evidence is the superannuation fund or other regulated entity going to be looking for. And there might be a gap between what you think is good enough and what they are looking for because of their in-depth, their CPS 230 requirements. I'd imagine there needs to be a meeting of minds there.
Oh, absolutely. And I think when it becomes regulated, it's not just going to be a matter of we think you're a bunch of good people and we trust you and we've got a relationship. The trust kind of goes out the door. This, like, they want evidence, and so they want to know that you've tested it and it's credible. And so I think that's where the rubber hits the road, right? It's not we've thought about it. It's actually we've done something about it and we've shown the results. And we know if you went through us from an operational risk perspective, we know that we're in good shape.
And as part of that, and using AlphaCert as an example, or thinking about the fund managers, you've got to now identify your material service providers that might impact your ability to serve your client. So if I'm a fund manager, it's not just my capabilities, who's supporting me and making sure I test those capabilities as well.
Fund managers, their custodian is critical. A lot of, say, their unit pricing and the like are coming and managed by the custodian. So the accuracy of that, the ability to get a daily unit price, that's not just important to the fund manager, but ultimately that's going to roll up into the options and portfolios of the super fund, and their members are going to make decisions on that from a redemption perspective. They might want to further invest, change investment options, and if they don't have that information, their members can't make good decisions, right? And we're back to exactly what APRA is trying to target. And yeah, absolutely.
And I'd imagine there'd be a number of fund managers that things like unit pricing, some of their other investment operations activities are going to be offshore.
Yeah.
And they need to have a look at that, not just through their own lens, but through the CPS 230 lens.
Yeah, and so let's take sort of 3 examples. So one, yeah, absolutely the unit price. If your custodian couldn't give you a unit price, do you have any other unit price or NAV oversight process? Do you have a shadow or contingency NAV that you're calculating that you can use in the event that you're not able to get it from your custodian, or that you're validating the custodian's giving you accurate unit pricing? And so you've got a level of confidence in that will withstand the rigor of an audit or a due diligence from your fund client. They might want to know that you're operating within the investment mandate that you've been provided. So there's some post-trade compliance work in terms of operational oversight to give them confidence that you're not trading outside of the rails that you've agreed to for their members. That's really important as well. Maybe one of the other ones is just maybe your liquidity or your cash position. Like you're not unduly putting members' money at risk because you're trading in a position that means that you're not in a position to meet redemption requirements, for example. So they're just 3 examples where they go, look, you're providing an essential service to our members. We want to make sure the money is invested as per the mandate, that it's not unduly risky from a liquidity position, and your performance and unit pricing is accurate and provided to us in a timely manner. And if you can evidence all that, and also on top of that, the data's secure, only the people that need to access the data can access it potentially, and we haven't got into the people side of things, we've been talking technology. It could be that if Dave got hit by a bus, do you have somebody else who can perform these functions, right? Like key person risks in a small operation or a small team are always something that keep managers up at night, right? Because if someone's not available to do their job on a particular day or week because they're ill or they've been injured or whatever it might be, what is your backup to that? Yep. I think lots of questions get asked when you look at your business continuity and your ability to recover from an outage or an operational disruption.
And I think it's interesting as you rattle off all those requirements, and they're critical they really are critical operations. If I think about it from a super fund perspective, to be able to do all the things you talk about. And if I'm a fund manager, and especially a good fund manager, I'll probably have most of that in place. But I think the key message that I'm hearing is don't assume that what you've got in place will be adequate for CPS 230, even though you're not regulated by APRA. And I think that's a key. Just don't assume that what you're doing is.
Yeah, like a simple example might be, yes, you're doing those functions, but if you had a spreadsheet corrupt or one person missing in the office on a critical day or week, does that operation cease to function, right? Or have you got a continuity plan for that? In the case of an operational interruption of some variety, how are you going to recover from that?
And I guess previously the trustee or the super fund trustee might have asked the question, have you got a BCP? Have you got something in place? And the fund manager would have just said yes, and everyone would be happy. Yeah, now it's going to be demanding a lot more evidence.
The GS007 framework, there's a lot of overlap with CPS 230.
Okay.
But again, that was a framework, and it was an opportunity for the investment managers to, stand up and win new work off the back of having a quality operation and be able to take on new mandates. And it might be asked by your clients, but it wasn't mandatory. Think of it more as best practice, right? And something to aspire to, but not necessarily mandatory. I think what CPS 230 does is, while there's a lot of overlap with GS007, I think it ceases to be optional, and suddenly it's become a mandate to retain your clients.
So for fund managers and other service providers, I think we finish up our chat. What are some of the key dates? What should they be looking out for?
Yeah, look, we're probably running up pretty close to Christmas. I think at this stage, just be aware that your super fund clients will either publicly have posted that you are a material service provider on their website, or will soon do that. So they've got a bit of time. You'll probably find yourself on the list if you're an investment manager, a key technology provider, or a custodian. You're going to be on that list. So now it's starting to get prepared. And I think the new year is a good time to really start to prepare yourself for what are our critical operations, who are our people. So starting to actually start to build a list and build a plan around what's going to be in scope. And then the key is it's going to be that July to October timeframe where, if they haven't done so already, your super fund clients will want to perform some due diligence, and then contractually they'll probably want to ensure that they've got all the appropriate terms and clauses and coverage around business continuity, cybersecurity, disaster recovery time objectives. All of those are going to be, if not already, they'll be included in your contract with the ability to step in and review every year that you're maintaining it.
Because CPS 230 becomes effective 1 July 2025
for the
next
super
year,
funds,
so it's not that far away. And the APRA regulated entities need to report to APRA their register of material service providers with quite a lot of detail. It's not just a list, it's quite a lot of detail that they'll need to report to APRA by the end of October.
It's going to be difficult to build big project teams when you're a small organisation, but I think there's a lot of entities, including, say, AlphaCert, that you can accelerate a lot of these requirements by just using good tech, borrowing the cybersecurity posture and frameworks of proper service providers. You get a lot of value out of your custodians as well. So these things you'll be able to tick off and accelerate as you go into this, as opposed to necessarily having to build out big project teams and multi-year projects to get you there. Yeah, and I think it's about working smarter next year so that you can tick off and be one of those providers that are ready for CPS 230.
That sounds like really good advice, Mark. Thanks for joining me on this AlphaChat today. And 1 July 2025 will come very quickly.
Yes, it will. All right. Thank you, Stephen.
Terrific. Bye.
Bye.